Archive 2432. The tourists nobody asked for. Former classification, internal use only. Current status, declassified after expiration of Cultural Containment Directive 88C. The most misunderstood vacation in galactic history. There is an old human saying that truth is stranger than fiction. After 70 years working for the Pre-FTL Cultural Containment Division, I can confirm that fiction is usually much better organized. One of the most entertaining experiences of my retirement has been reading the countless books your civilization has written about extraterrestrials. Humans possess an extraordinary talent for discovering patterns where none exist, dismissing obvious evidence, and occasionally arriving astonishingly close to the truth entirely by accident. Several years ago, a particularly enthusiastic volume caught my attention. Its central argument was simple. Ancient visitors from the stars had guided early humanity. They had taught architecture, astronomy, engineering, agriculture, navigation. Some versions even suggested they had personally supervised the construction of your greatest monuments. I will admit something I have never written in any official report. When I first opened the book, I became briefly concerned. Not because of its conclusions, because I suspected someone had leaked classified archives. That concern lasted almost 6 pages. The author had identified the correct suspects. Unfortunately, he assigned them entirely the wrong profession. They were not instructors. They were tourists. There is a considerable difference. The Sol system was never regarded as strategically important. It was too far from major trade routes. Its yellow dwarf star was ordinary. The local civilizations were primitive. Its bureaucracy, fortunately, non-existent. From the perspective of the Galactic Union, it was an unremarkable destination. From the perspective of ordinary citizens, it was paradise. Long before humanity learned to write, Earth had already earned an excellent reputation among recreational travelers. Clean oceans, endless forests, comfortable temperatures, spectacular mountain ranges, thousands of edible fruits, an astonishing variety of wildlife, minimal security inspections, no immigration checkpoints, and perhaps most importantly, no reservation system. You simply arrived, found a pleasant valley, enjoyed the scenery, returned home. Some civilizations crossed half the galaxy simply to watch your sunsets. I understand why. They remain exceptional. Naturally, such popularity created administrative challenges. Vacation permits, environmental regulations, protected ecological zones, seasonal migration restrictions, interstellar insurance policies, temporary atmospheric flight authorizations. The usual paperwork. Most visitors respected local regulations. Some did not. The universe has never lacked individuals convinced that rules exist primarily for other people. A family from the Perseus Spur once attempted to roast an entire sea creature approximately the size of one of your modern naval vessels. The resulting smoke column was later incorporated into several regional creation myths. Another visitor insisted on carving his initials into a large stone formation. He received a substantial fine. Humans later declared the marking sacred. History occasionally rewards the wrong people. Contrary to numerous human theories, almost nobody came to Earth for scientific observation. There were already countless inhabited worlds under study. Earth offered something much rarer. Peace, at least most of the time. Our historians describe prehistoric Earth using a phrase that does not translate perfectly into any modern human language. The closest approximation would be a place where intelligent beings could briefly forget they belonged to civilization. It was remarkably popular. The only persistent complaint concerned insects. Even highly advanced species have limits. Now, before you begin wondering whether tourists secretly built your monuments. No, they did not. That misunderstanding has survived far longer than it deserves. The pyramids were built by humans. Stone circles were built by humans. Ancient temples, humans. Monolithic statues, humans. Your ancestors required far less assistance than later generations seemed willing to believe. In fact, one recurring problem documented in our archives involved travelers attempting to compliment local builders. The humans interpreted these compliments as divine approval. Several religions became unnecessarily complicated. The Department of Cultural Damage Assessment still considers that period one of its more avoidable administrative failures. You may now be asking a reasonable question. If Earth truly received so many visitors, why is there so little convincing evidence? That question eventually became important enough to create an entirely new division within our agency. Not because anyone intended to hide the past, because nobody had anticipated that tourists would behave like tourists. They left litter. Souvenirs disappeared. Photographs went missing. Campfires were abandoned. Vehicles occasionally malfunctioned. Someone always wandered outside the approved recreational zone. By the time the Galactic Union realized the scale of the problem, thousands of undocumented visits had accumulated over several millennia. Recovering every trace became optimistic. Containing the resulting confusion became our responsibility. Which brings us to one of the most successful disinformation operations ever conducted by the Cultural Containment Division. Ironically, it involved telling the truth. Almost all of it. Just not in a form anyone would believe. Part 2. Vacation regulations and other historical disasters. The first official travel guide describing Earth appeared approximately 28,000 of your years ago. Its title has unfortunately been lost, but surviving catalog records describe it as Sol 3, an untouched world worth visiting before civilization arrives. The brochure was remarkably accurate. It praised Earth's extraordinary biodiversity, its mild climate, its endless coastlines, its abundant freshwater, its spectacular night skies. One reviewer complained that the mosquitoes were aggressive. The revised edition simply recommended stronger insect repellent. Within only a few centuries, Earth became fashionable. Travel agencies advertised seasonal excursions. Families planned holidays around the migration of enormous animals. Artists came to paint landscapes. Biologists cataloged species. Astronomers preferred the unusually clear atmosphere. Retired couples enjoyed quiet walks through forests that stretched farther than the eye could see. There were mountain expeditions, polar cruises, desert photography tour, even luxury orbital sightseeing flights. One particularly expensive package promised its customers something called authentic primitive civilization observation. It consistently sold out months in advance. Naturally, tourists required rules. They always do. Visitors received a handbook before departure. Most ignored it. The handbook contained several simple instructions. Do not interfere with local cultural development. Do not exchange technology. Do not demonstrate advanced scientific principles. Do not reveal your origin. Do not encourage worship. Do not accept gifts implying divine status. Do not leave equipment unattended. And under no circumstances, do not attempt to improve the locals. That final rule existed because someone inevitably tried. Fortunately, very few succeeded. Human beings have always displayed a healthy skepticism toward strangers offering unsolicited advice. Contrary to many popular theories, ancient humans were neither passive nor incapable. Our historical observers repeatedly noted the opposite. They were inventive, resourceful, adaptable. If they watched someone solve a practical problem, They often developed their own solution shortly afterward, entirely on their own. This created endless confusion inside the Tourism Oversight Bureau. Every few decades, inspectors investigated reports of prohibited technological contamination. Most concluded with nearly identical observations. The humans simply figured it out. The Bureau disliked those reports. They made regulation difficult. Of course, not every incident ended so neatly. Tourists, regardless of their homeworld, possess remarkable consistency. Someone always wandered away from the designated observation area. Someone always ignored warning signs. Someone always insisted that one regulation surely did not apply to them. One famous incident involved a visitor who landed beside a farming settlement merely to enjoy lunch. His portable cooking unit malfunctioned. It produced several impressive columns of flame before shutting itself down. The local inhabitants watched from a respectful distance. The visitor repaired the device, finished his meal, collected his belongings, returned home. 3 generations later, the location had become a sacred site associated with heavenly fire. The repair technician received a formal reprimand. The villagers received a religion. Neither outcome had been anticipated. Another traveler accidentally dropped a polished metallic mirror while packing. He searched for nearly 2 hours. Unable to find it, he filed the required property loss declaration and departed. The mirror remained. Local hunters eventually discovered an object that reflected faces with impossible clarity. According to several surviving oral traditions, it became an artifact capable of revealing one's true spirit. Our lost property department eventually located it. Unfortunately, by then it had already become culturally significant. Recovery was deemed administratively inconvenient. The mirror was quietly left where it was. Sometimes bureaucracy recognizes defeat. Then there was the matter of the stone circles. No, our visitors did not build them. However, they greatly admired them. Several travel diaries describe prehistoric humans transporting enormous stones, using methods that impressed engineers from civilizations thousands of years more advanced. One traveler wrote, "We had expected to observe primitive construction techniques. Instead, we found ourselves taking notes. I have always considered that one of the finest compliments humanity ever received." Eventually, these accumulated misunderstandings became impossible to ignore. Not because humans possessed overwhelming evidence, because our archives contained thousands of perfectly ordinary vacation reports that, when viewed from a human perspective, sounded astonishing. Observed ceremonial gathering near large stone monument. Accepted invitation to communal feast despite Regulation 14b. Local children requested demonstration of musical instrument. Request politely declined. Vehicle frightened several domesticated animals during low-altitude departure. Please reimburse cleaning costs after volcanic ash entered shuttle ventilation system. None of these reports seemed remarkable to the clerks who filed them. Several millennia later, they looked suspiciously like mythology. Everything changed when, in the 20th century, one exceptionally determined human author began collecting ancient legends from around the world. He noticed recurring themes: visitors descending from the heavens, strange lights, knowledge appearing unexpectedly, gods arriving and departing. When the first translated copy of his manuscript reached our historical review office, several analysts became visibly uncomfortable. "He is connecting incidents that occurred thousands of years apart," one observed. "Yes," another replied. "Unfortunately, he is connecting the correct incidents." For nearly 20 minutes, genuine concern spread through the department. Then someone continued reading. The author concluded that our ancestors had designed humanity's greatest monuments, taught civilization, directed agriculture, invented engineering, organized religion, and personally supervised nearly every remarkable achievement in human history. Silence filled the room. Finally, Senior Archivist Baloran closed the manuscript. "He has identified our tourists," he said. A pause followed, and confused them with the construction crews. Relief was immediate. Within minutes, the meeting had shifted from crisis management to laughter. None of it was malicious. There is simply something profoundly reassuring about discovering that someone has found half the truth and then enthusiastically buried it beneath the other half. That should have been the end of the matter. It was not, because someone, somewhere within the Cultural Containment Division, had a remarkably bureaucratic idea. Part 3. The safest place to hide the truth. The proposal reached the Cultural Containment Division under the uninspiring title, Alternative Information Saturation Strategy, Proposal 11. The document itself was considerably more interesting. Its central conclusion occupied only a single sentence. If suppressing the truth becomes impractical, increase the amount of truth available until it becomes statistically indistinguishable from speculation. Several senior officials initially objected. One argued that openly discussing extraterrestrial visitors would cause panic. Another feared governments might begin investigating archaeological sites more aggressively. A third wondered whether humanity was psychologically prepared. Then the division's statistical analysts presented an unexpected finding. Humans had developed an extraordinary ability to disagree with one another. Present the same evidence to 10 intelligent individuals. You would likely receive 12 different explanations. The analysts considered this one of humanity's greatest natural defense mechanisms. No additional assistance appeared necessary. Proposal 11C was approved unanimously. The operation did not involve fabricating evidence. That would have been expensive. Instead, the division quietly encouraged an approach we later called narrative dilution. Whenever someone uncovered an intriguing mystery, offer 5 explanations. One should be reasonably accurate. The other 4 should become progressively more imaginative. Within weeks, public discussion would abandon the plausible explanation entirely and focus on debating the impossible ones. It worked far better than anyone expected. Humans did nearly all the work themselves. Decades later, a television producer approached one of our embedded cultural observers with an idea. He wished to create a documentary series exploring whether ancient visitors from the stars had influenced early civilizations. The observer submitted a routine memorandum. The response arrived less than 2 hours later. Approved. Attached was additional funding, a surprisingly generous production budget, and a recommendation to assign 2 retired historians as independent consultants. Officially, they had never existed. Unofficially, they thoroughly enjoyed the work. The production meetings became legendary inside the division. Whenever the writers proposed something almost correct, one consultant would gently encourage them. Interesting. Very interesting. But have you considered making it considerably stranger? If a temple had once been visited by vacationers, perhaps suggest it was a planetary navigation beacon. If someone found an unusual carving, perhaps speculate about interstellar mining operations. If an ancient legend described visitors descending from the sky, perhaps connect it to 3 entirely unrelated civilizations separated by thousands of kilometers. The stories became increasingly extravagant. The audience became increasingly fascinated. And the original historical incidents quietly disappeared beneath layer after layer of speculation. From an information containment perspective, it was magnificent. The series eventually found its perfect presenter, an enthusiastic gentleman with an unmistakable hairstyle that appeared to violate several well-established aerodynamic principles. He possessed 2 remarkable qualities. First, he was genuinely curious. Second, he never encountered a theory he considered too ambitious. Our consultants admired him enormously. Not because he always reached the correct conclusion. Quite the opposite. He transformed uncertainty into entertainment with such enthusiasm that millions of viewers began asking questions they might never have considered otherwise. Most arrived at spectacularly incorrect answers, which, from the division's perspective, was entirely acceptable. The objective had never been to convince humanity. The objective had been to ensure that certainty remained impossible. Occasionally, however, someone would write to the program with an unexpectedly sensible explanation. Those letters always received polite replies. They were carefully filed, and then quietly forgotten beneath thousands of messages discussing impossible energy crystals, planetary superweapons, universal pyramids, and civilizations that allegedly built absolutely everything. One of our analysts once remarked, "The truth has become the least exciting theory available." He intended it as a complaint. The director promoted him. People often ask whether the Cultural Containment Division still exists. Officially, no. Unofficially, retirement has taught me never to underestimate bureaucracies. Organizations disappear. Departments merge. Names change. Forms become longer. Someone always remains responsible for filing reports. The universe has survived for billions of years largely because somebody, somewhere, insists that every incident requires the proper paperwork. As for the ancient visitors, yes, they came. They admired your forests. They sailed your oceans. They climbed your mountains. They complained about insects. They misplaced equipment. They violated campground regulations. A few behaved irresponsibly. Most simply enjoyed their holidays before returning home with photographs and stories that their friends probably exaggerated. That is considerably less dramatic than conquering civilizations. It is also considerably closer to the truth. There remains one misunderstanding I have never managed to correct. Humans often assume that if extraterrestrials visited Earth in antiquity, then your ancestors could not have accomplished their greatest achievements alone. Our historical records suggest precisely the opposite. The visitors admired humanity far more often than humanity admired them. Your ancestors crossed deserts without engines, raised monuments without anti-gravity, mapped the skies without orbital observatories, navigated oceans without inertial computers. No tourist accomplished those things for them. At most, a few stood nearby, quietly impressed. I sometimes wonder what future historians will write about your own civilization. Perhaps they, too, will mistake ordinary travelers for legendary beings. History has a peculiar habit of confusing witnesses with heroes. If that happens, I hope they remember one small detail. Whenever an ancient mystery appears impossibly complicated, before assuming it involved gods, cosmic engineers, or secret masters of civilization, consider a far simpler possibility. Someone may simply have been on vacation. End of Archive 2432.